All right, guys. So yesterday we talked about why ethics is important, and we also talked about ethical decision making. But right in this video, we're actually going to be talking about how becoming an ethical public speaker actually happens for you, and how to not become an ethical public speaker, or what not to do to avoid non-ethical practices in public speaking. So as we went by, or as we went over before in the last video, as far as like ethical decision making, we make our decisions based on a set of ethics and morals that we know and that we have taken, and what we determine is to be right and what is to be wrong within our own selves. And that's based upon what our own ideologies are and how to move on from there. So in this video, I'm going to show you a couple of practices that you can do to help you implement becoming a better ethical speaker, and what that looks like and what that doesn't look like. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go going now. All right. Okay, so how to be an ethical public speaker. So first, make sure your goals of your speech are ethically sound. And by that I mean, like, there are like a couple of major ethical things that we just kind of do and do not do, like killing people. Killing people is just essentially wrong. Like, we don't want to murder anyone, so we try to steer away from that and to not kill anyone. So in your speech, like if you are advocating, let's say, for like the right to kill yourself based on your illness, right? If you have a terminal illness, you have a right in California to kill yourself essentially, and you can do that, and that's ethically sound and something that has been under review for quite a number of doctors. I have actually quite a number of like specialties and all of that, and doctors have to sign off on that too. They have to allow you to self-medicate and heal yourself essentially. So when you're talking about that, you want to have like at least all of the evidence that kind of goes back with that. And then also, like, you want to make sure that you're not just out there being like, oh yeah, like you should die and you should die and you should die and you should die, just because it's like, that's not really ethically sound there, is it? It's just kind of more so like you telling people to kill themselves, which is not a good idea, by the way. So I would refrain from that sort of speech. The next one is to fully be prepared, as I mentioned before. Gather all the information, know what you're talking about. If you don't know what you're talking about, how can you know that you are being ethically sound? How do you know? Because sometimes, like, we just go off of word of mouth. Like, I have friends who still believe in things that are like scientifically proven to be wrong, but they believe in them because they were taught that in high school or something like that. And I'm old, guys. Like, I'm almost 30, so like, yeah, like these, like, you have to really, really do your research and look into things. Be completely honest, right? If you feel morally obligated to one thing, but your speech is about something completely different, and you're trying to persuade us to that, it it's gonna be disingenuous, right? It's not gonna be clear. It's not gonna be concise. It's gonna be disingenuous, and we're not gonna believe you. And if we don't believe you, then what's the point of even speaking about it, right? So be completely honest about it. Avoid name calling. Okay, I feel that this one is a big one. All right, so in our politics currently in our country, we have someone in office that really, really, really likes to just call people out for no reason at all. Um, that is not an ethical public speaking practice. That is just fear mongering and like mudslinging and throwing. Mudslinging is essentially name calling in politics, and it's just bad. It just makes you look stupid. It just makes everyone feel dumb around you. Like, I wouldn't sit there and just name call people just because I could. It doesn't make you sound any more intelligent. It actually makes you sound more stupid than anything. So I would completely avoid that, in any respect, because it's just not cool. I mean, we're all adults here, okay? And like sometimes, yes, sometimes when you're pissed off and angry and you're popping off, like, that's one thing. you know, like that's out of anger. But when you're doing it just to make yourself feel better and to be better or to whatever, to try to like lift yourself up, like don't do it. You just look stupid at the end of the day. So I would completely avoid doing that. And do what you say you will do, right? So in your speech, if you're doing your persuasive speech and you're coming to a call of action, right? You're telling us like what we need to do. You should be implementing those calls of action in your own personal life, right? Because if you're telling us to like, oh, like, you know, to reduce plastic and to save the turtles, don't get a straw from Starbucks, but I see you walking down somewhere, or I see you like on Zoom or something like that, and you're drinking out of a Starbucks cup with a straw. I'm like, you just told us not to do that, and you're doing it right now. That's hypocritical. You know, that doesn't make any sense. So we have to reflect what we're actually preaching in our speeches as well. Okay. And so the next one, how to not be an ethical public speaker first. And I know I went over this inside of our syllabus, but I'm going to go over it again. Plagiarism. Do not copy verbatim at all without citing them what someone has said. And that is like writing it down the same way and then telling us it's yours, that you made that up, but you didn't make that up. And you know, a lot of people, they like to use like I dreamed a dream, or I had a dream, like the speech from Martin Luther King Jr. A lot of people use that, but they always quote him said and always say like said by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I've had a dream or blah blah blah, right? Like they go on with it. That is plagiarism. If you do not cite them, it's plagiarism. If you cite them, then you're citing your source. You're saying like this person said this, and this is how it pertains to my context, right? That's not plagiarism. Plagiarism is taking what they said and using it and saying that it's your original thought. Okay, it is not your original thought. That is not ethical. That can get you in a lot of trouble. So global plagiarism is essentially taking an entire speech someone else wrote and putting your own name on it. So plagiarism could be like you're taking bits of it, but global plagiarism is taking everything, like everything that they wrote, word for word, exact as your own, and that is absolutely not okay. Um, I don't appreciate that at all. Like I said, I take plagiarism extremely seriously, and so it is my duty to report plagiarism and cheating. So yes, global plagiarism, exact copy of everything. Patchwork plagiarism is taking like a group, like a paragraph, right? So you go through, like, let's say you go through 50 speeches and you take paragraphs from each of those speech and compile it into this one cohesive speech, which might sound really amazing, but it's none of your original thought, none of your words. That's called patchwork plagiarism. And again, plagiarism, super bad. Okay, and so here is where paraphrasing comes into play. So you can paraphrase what someone has said in a different way, right? So changing a couple of words in the sentence to make it sound like you a little bit. But if you're still not citing it, that's still plagiarism, okay? That's still copying it from a source that is not your own thought. So paraphrasing, it is helpful, but you have to let us know, like, said in this journal article by Dr. So-and-so, he mentioned that virtual reality has an impact on the brain. However, neurological scientists have not yet discovered blah, 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 right? Okay, I use virtual reality because that's what I do. But you have to, using that paraphrase, using their argument to help your argument, you have to cite them. You have to let us know, like, I got that information from this person. And so they helped me formulate this idea based on their argument. But if I'm just rewording their argument and not citing them, that's paraphrasing, and that is also considered plagiarism. Okay, so as of this video, we just discussed how to be an ethical public speaker and how to not be an ethical public speaker. And essentially, it comes down to the fact of just be honest. You know, be honest in what you got, what you're gonna do, how you're gonna deliver your speech. Cite everything if you need to. I have cited, literally in one page, I have cited probably 100 authors in just one page, And it was a lot, but I mean, I had to because it's their argument, it's their research, it's their stuff. So I do that so that I can use their argument later to help reinforce my own argument. And again, to not be an ethical public speaker would be taking someone else's work without giving them the credit. You know, people work hard for their stuff, and you're going to work hard for your stuff too. And if someone used like your essay or whatever you have for another class or cheated off of you, it takes away from your dignity, you know? So keep that all in mind when we're going over like creating your outlines and you know, doing some informative speeches and persuasive speeches, to remember that in ethics, the difference between right and wrong can be actually very small, as we saw in our activity. You know, like we might think that something's right when it's actually not really right. So it's always good to ask and get that reassurance on. Sorry, guys. It's always good to ask and get the reassurance of how things will be ethical and how that can actually play out. Okay. So you guys should have already answered the questions that I posted in this video, and then we're going to move on to the very last video. I swear, I'm so sorry, guys. This one was super long, but we're going to move on to the very last video. It's going to be super short, and I'm going to pose a discussion question again for you, and we are going to be done for this week. All right. So I'm going to see you guys there.